Remember to like, subscribe, and share for more content. If you'd like to support Sir TalksALot, please consider donating to the PayPal link in the description.
I'm Frank Lee, and this is an odd adventure. This one is dedicated to Lasso of Truth, the Gay Rascal, and Diablo Dame. Thank you for watching. This memory was revived when I read a 2020 report of attacks in London that left a deer carcass strewn across the road near Humberside Airport. Since as early as the 1600s, there have been reports of a monstrous half-man, half-wolf killer terrorizing England. Over time, it has come to be called the Lincolnshire Dogman. I was first made aware of this creature by my papa, Father Lee, who encountered the beast during an 1886 trip. So when I heard a 1995 report from Grimsby of a werewolf spreading mayhem, I knew I had to investigate. Reports stated that a large wolf with glowing eyes had been seen in a caravan park. Terrified locals stated that the guard on duty had seen the beast and fled. Often described as being 7 feet tall, with jet black or charcoal gray fur and glowing blue or amber eyes, the Dogman has left a bloody wake of destruction in its path. Here's a professional rendition I had done by a local artist. Wanting to jump headfirst into the investigation, I flew to England in my private plane and hey-hoed into Louth. As I fell from 35,000 feet, I wondered, what does a werewolf's skin feel like as a coat? Are there going to be more than one to kill? Will the food kill me before the beast? Cutting through the cold English air at 126 miles an hour filled me with excitement. The same feeling I got when I jumped my Ducati 955 into the lake during a Polar Bear Club meeting. After landing atop St. James Cathedral and scoping the area, I made my way to ground. Since it was just after 0300 in the morning, I decided to sleep the rest of the night on the steps of the cathedral. After a short 2-hour power nap, I decided to start asking locals about the Dogman. I headed to Ye Olde White Swan, a Louth pub that has been serving this area since 1612. While I stuffed myself with 15 servings of sausage mash and veg, chased by 72 Lowenbrow loggers, I observed the crowd. I knew the werewolf could be anyone. Having studied werewolf lore for decades, I knew the human form would have hairy hands, a tailored suit, perfect hair, and smell like pina coladas. Unfortunately, this did little to narrow my suspect list. I nonchalantly called the barmaid over to pick her brain. I asked her, "Who do you think the Lincolnshire Dogman is?" The bar ran silent at my question, and tension rose. I knew I was onto something, so I stood up and I asked the pub, "What do you know about the Lincolnshire Dogman?" After being told several times to keep my voice down and stop talking crazy, I decided to ask harder. The resulting argument with the patrons was heated. Unfortunately, I was kicked out of the pub before I could make any headway, but not before I managed to throw one of the solid oak tables at the bartender. I decided that Louth was a dead end and made my way to Grimsby, the site of the sightings earlier that year. I took a black cab for the 40-minute drive up A18, hoping to spot signs of the Dogman. Unfortunately, there was nothing! When the driver dropped me off on the outskirts of Grimsby, I tipped him well, politely thanked him, and went about my investigation. Because everyone knows you don't mess with the black cab. Knowing that the next full moon was only 2 days away, I knew my time here was short. I also knew that the werewolf was probably one of the upper-class citizens, so I started knocking on doors of every high-end house I could find. When I came to the Bradley Manor, my first interaction with the butler made me highly suspicious.
That man was the most horrid person I have ever encountered in my life.
He told me his master was preparing for a dinner party and was not to be disturbed.
He was by far the stupidest person as well.
So I started probing like the aliens that visit Ray Gunn at night.
Oh, ha ha, very funny.
I asked him, "What do you know about the Dogman?" His reaction told me I was in the right place, as he told me if I didn't leave, he would have me arrested. So I pushed harder. I asked him if his master was a fan of Trader Vic's, if his master knows the Queen. I asked him, does your master have hairy hands, like pina coladas and buy tailored suits? His answers told me that his master was the person I was looking for.
It seemed like all his knowledge of werewolves was based on some old song.
But before I could make a move, the Bobbies came and forcibly removed me from the property. This solidified my belief that this was the right place. So after the Bobbies left me in the heart of Grimsby, I hatched a plan to find the werewolf. The small amount of information I could glean from the conversation with the house familiar, otherwise referred to as the butler, told me that the dinner party was on Saturday, which coincided with the next full moon. Coincidence? I think not. I decided to keep an eye on the property from the surrounding bushes. I watched as servants and delivery personnel came and went. Occasionally, I would sneak up to get a closer look at goings-on, and to procure food from the caterers. I watched and waited. The night of the dinner party came about. People started flooding in around 5:30 in the p.m. High-class people being chauffeured to the manor. I had a moment of doubt when they brought in the local boys' choir for the entertainment, but when I saw the royal motorcade, I knew beyond a doubt that this was the right spot. After nightfall, I slipped towards the now bustling house, making sure not to be seen. I climbed to the second floor via a lattice and made entry into what appeared to be the study. After changing into my evening attire, I started my way down to the festivities. Being a master of disguise, I knew I would be safe from prying eyes. But this is where it gets odd. Everything was going according to plan until I decided to snag some hors d'oeuvres from one of the servants. As I emptied the tray of finger sandwiches into my pockets, a firm hand landed on my shoulder. It was the butler.
It was the biggest failure of my life. Not catching that idiot before he could ruin everything.
I attempted to slip away, but the butler called for security. Realizing that my time was short, I knew I had to act fast. So, I grabbed another tray of food and knocked out 2 security guards cold. The butler tried to intervene, and I laid him out like the Sunday wash, which was frankly awesome.
I tripped over one of the guests that buffoon had assaulted and hit my head on a table. I spent 7 years in the SAS, and it's simply not conceivable that that idiot would have stopped me.
I pushed my way for the main room where I knew the lycanthropic owner would be. I made it to the door of the den before the British Secret Service tackled me and put me in shackles. With party guests watching, the Royal Guard carried me out the front door. I watched the party guests intently as we all stepped into the moonlight. As they attempted to shove me into the car, I noticed a lone figure watching from the upper floor window. His eyes glowed an intense yellow. They shoved me into the car and proceeded to drive me towards the municipal jail for holding. Knowing that I had my target, I knew I had to escape. So, as we sped down the road, I picked the lock on my shackles, broke the window, and jumped out. The landing was rough, but it reminded me of playing with my dad as a kid. I slipped into the nearby forest and hid out until the search party moved to a different area. Roughly 2 hours later, I made my way back to the manor house where an ambulance was just pulling away.
My employer was so shaken by the events that he had a heart attack.
After things calmed down, I climbed back up the lattice and re-entered the property. I snuck around the house, quietly immobilizing each staff member I came across. After searching the entire property and disabling every living creature in the house, I realized my prey had escaped. Feeling a well of rage, I lost my cool and accidentally destroyed the entire master bedroom.
And unfortunately, he died. And his son inherited the property.
While I may have missed my target, I knew this would not be the end. Years later, I would make my return and take what was mine. The battle was harrowing, and I spent 3 days in the hospital recovering from the various bites and scratches I incurred. But, as always, I came out victorious, and the battle will forever be burned into my mind.
Some years later, he and his dogs died in an automobile accident.
Knowing that more of these beastly menaces exist, I have a feeling that this isn't the last werewolf I will hunt. I'm Frank Lee, and this has been an odd adventure. As always, have a wonderful day.